Curly from the Three Stooges. The beard.
We're live.
Okay. I have Jeff on my far left. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jeff?
I'm on my far right, so no, I think...
The other way? So
Yeah,
who's on your far left?
You are.
Oh, you are. So it's exactly opposite.
I'm Jeff Kurtz. I'm with the Salem-Keizer School District.
I have Jennifer Sapinski next.
Oh, I'm Jennifer Sapinski, and I'm with Tiger Tualatin Instructional Technology.
Garner?
Sure. Melissa Garner, and I work at the Department of Ed in Instructional Technology as well.
Melissa Lim, Portland Public Schools.
Corinne Richards, Beaverton Public Schools. And today we're discussing... Melissa, why don't you want to give us some background?
So we're going to discuss struggling with educators' lack of technology fluency. So that's the name of a blog post that was on Scott McLeod's blog, and he's a technology educator in Iowa, I believe. And so our guiding question, which is from the blog post, and we've already started talking about some of this before we went live, but what can we do to build the internal capacity of both individual educators and school systems to be better learners and faster change agents?
Okay.
Jeff, you were saving something up to say.
I don't remember, but I can start us out for sure. I mean, I think that I do a lot of training to teachers, and there's a lot of excitement around the work that we do, and there's some resistance as well. And so I think that giving teachers a chance to play rather than have a lot of expectations around what they're supposed to do with a brand new tool. Say they just get an iPad and they feel like they need to prove that they were worthy of the gift that that their administrator or someone else bestowed upon them. And so there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of tension or nervousness around using it and using it right, and rather than just a spirit of, hey, let me play with this and figure out what it does and how it can help my practice. And I think that we could do a lot just by changing that, although that's a very difficult, I don't know, psychological shift for some people.
Yeah, I think we have expectations around PD, and that play and exploration hasn't been part of that. And so sometimes I feel like when I walk into a training for teachers and I don't hand them some really specific steps that they need to go through, they are a little offended. Like they want a packet of paper and they want some really specific things. And then the other side of that is to bringing exploration into things like, I mean, if I do an iPad workshop, they want to know how to use the iPad versus how to enhance instruction with the iPad. Mm-hmm. So that looks very different. The whole, like, here are the accessibility settings, and this is, let's go through each one, is very different than find me the contrast for the print. No. So I think some of it's our expectations around how professional development should look versus how it has looked.
And I found that I've had to take a step back so much. I've always wanted to talk about the instruction, which we always want to talk about the instruction. What's good instruction, and how do you embed technology into good instruction and change your instruction? But I've had to take a step back, not away, but allow myself to take more time and to give teachers more time to explore, and making sure that I'm always talking aloud what I'm doing. So, like, just for example, I was doing a little after-school workshop around quick assessments and talking through everything I did. So, like, when I did the secondary click with 2 fingers, I would talk aloud. So I'm going to use my 2 fingers, and I'm clicking on the trackpad. And I had everybody saying, wait a second, what did you do? So just not assuming that people know things, and when I'm doing shortcuts on my MacBook, when I'm in a workshop, talking through the shortcuts that I'm using, and that way I'm teaching them in case they didn't. So not assuming that everybody knows, and constantly reminding myself that no, not everybody knows these different tips, and making sure that I talk aloud.
I'm done at 10. You want me to walk over?
And I do that when I'm working with students. And so if I'm doing a model lesson or I'm co-teaching, I'm constantly doing that with students. So now I'm trying to remember to do that when I'm working just with adults. And that's been really an eye-opener for me, that because people don't know and they're afraid to say they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And also taking a step back, and so I was working with some teachers, a small team of teachers, and we were talking about math instruction, and they have access to some iPads. And I was noticing that they really don't know how to use the iPads at the basic level. So I scheduled a time to meet with them to go through an iPad boot camp. Even though they've already had it for a couple of years, there's things, especially with the new operating system, that they don't know. And so then I also opened it up to the whole building. And actually I have almost the entire staff coming now. And it's just a simple, quick iPad boot camp.
So have you, is it online? They meet with you personally?
Yeah, I've been meeting, so we have 10 elementary schools, and we have the one that's one-to-one this year. They're doing one-to-one iPads. We're in the middle of a rollout. And so I've been meeting with the other 9, and curriculum and instruction's funding 2 full days of roving subs for each building. So I get to meet with teachers in 2-hour blocks of time, and the subs just kind of roll to each classroom. And so I meet with like 4 teachers in a small group for 2 hours, and we do planning and some professional development, and then I meet with another. And so on.
Are they generally excited to have you there, or is it something that feels put upon them?
They've been really excited because I've made it clear with the principals that even though the plan is I meet with every teacher, if there's teachers that aren't ready, then we're going to change it. So like with one building, I have met with every grade level team, and then the building principal funded a half day for ELD teachers. But in another building, I only met with probably about half the teachers because the other half either weren't ready, or there were whatever reason they didn't want to or couldn't meet with me. So the funding is there. And then within that funding structure, I just work with the principal and the teachers to whatever best works for the building.
So how do you select the building? Is it just the administrator reaches out to you?
So we have funding for all of the rest of the elementary schools, and that's my biggest challenge, is actually connecting with the principals. So I've connected with 4 out of the 9. Well, I've connected with all of them. I emailed them all at the beginning of the school year, like right before school started, and they all but 1 got back to me. And then I've met face-to-face with 4, and I've been in 3 buildings, and I have 1 building I'll be in next week. So the rest of the 5, I have plans for 2, but then 3 I just haven't been able to nail them down. And it's just so much, there's so much going on. So I just have to keep talking to them, and I actually went to 1 building and talked to the principal face-to-face. I made sure that I was there when I kind of knew he was going to be there, and ran into him. So that's the biggest challenge, is just getting on their schedule.
Oh, I didn't know you'd be here.
Oh, you're here? This is your building?
Oh, it's good to see you. Hey, it's kind of nice that we ran into each other.
Well, I have you.
So there's been a discussion here between me and someone else that sorry, unnamed, that there's a belief among some people that if you just teach technology in the context of authentic learning without any fundamental underlying understanding of what that technology is and does, that they're somehow magically just going to get it. So if you just show up with a technology and you just are amazing with the technology, teachers are going to just figure out from what you've done why you're good. So what you were talking, I know, right? I'm like, no, there's explicit instruction involved. You have to actually say, so what you were talking about, Jennifer, fits in with what I really believe about why that's true. It's that we get in the we're lazy when we learn. We just learn what is being presented to us rather than thinking about and doing any metacognition about the learning that we're doing. You know, what made that successful? It's what we do in Cadre. And why that makes it so successful is that we take a pause to talk about why we do what we do and the tools that we're using to make it happen. And that makes a huge difference to people's actual learning how to use what we're talking about using.
Yeah, one thing I noticed at Cadre though is it is like it seems like most people are there because they want to be there,
Yes.
and that's not always the case for me walking into a school.
Yes.
Yep.
A lot of the times it is because there's still some excitement around, you know, getting something new and learning something new, and but then there's other teachers who just don't want it at all. I accidentally walked into a classroom yesterday. I was meaning to meet another teacher, and I walked in the wrong room boldly, and realized, oh, I'm in the wrong room, and just ended up having a good conversation with a teacher who didn't come to my training that morning because she wasn't really interested, and there's a little bit of fear, a little intimidation around introducing something new to her practice, and that, you know, by and large, that can be one of the biggest barriers to doing training with technology is just teachers feeling full already, and not really realizing that this might be something, not a distraction, but something that lets them see their practice in a different way, kind of lets them get out of their, you know, their mindsets about their work.
Yep.
Like, I just recently taught a class on Google Sites, and rather than having those teachers do something education related, I specifically and told them explicitly that I'm going to have you make a Halloween website because I don't want you thinking about the work right now. I want you to think about the tool, and then we'll stop and we'll talk about how the tool applies to the work. But I don't want the work to get in the way of how you might learn this tool before you see how it can impact your practice. So I think you have to be real explicit sometimes about, you know, separating things and giving them freedom to learn and feel safe in the environment. I think that can create more excitement around the tool, and it just helped open doors to connections they wouldn't have otherwise seen to the tool and to the work.
I like that you allowed them to play first. That probably freed them up quite a bit. I always feel like I have such little time that everything has to connect. And I bet that if I let that go a little bit, people would be a little more comfortable.
Yeah. I maybe it's just wrong, but I'm a little looser with my structure. I have key things that I want to share. I know the group well enough. I've done my homework ahead of time that I know kind of where they're at and what they want from this session, but I leave it a little more open. I don't have a solid, you know, I struggle with this at Cadre, learning some of that opener, closer stuff and how to structure your training, and because I felt like I was doing it wrong. But the more I reflected on what I actually do, the more I realized the value in structuring it a little more loosely and being able to be a little flexible with my teachers. I typically get better buy-in from them, a more relaxed atmosphere for the learning to take place when it's not so rigid and so structured. Now, I'm sure there are other people that would benefit more from me being a little more structured, but I'm thinking of the greater good and trying to keep it a little more flowing.
How long do you have when you do those kinds of workshops?
And it could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. Typically, it's about an hour. So
And is it after contract time or during contract time?
usually it's before.
Oh, okay.
Not before contract time, but at the beginning of the day before school.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, I find that's the best time so far with my elementary teachers has been that before school time. Once in a
Really?
while, I do one right after school too. Last year I did all of my trainings from 4 to 6, but I've already seen, you know, percentage-wise, I've seen more teachers this way this year.
So what time are you doing it in the morning?
So usually I start at 8 or 7:45.
Oh,
You know,
what time?
teachers
What time students come in?
are, most of our elementary schools start at 9:30, I think.
Oh, wow.
Some of them start at 9,
Oh man.
but the ones that start a little later are easier to get into.
Yeah, I think we all start at like 8 or 8:15 or.
Yeah.
Well, that would
I'm,
make it
I'm having
easier
a
for you.
6 o'clock train.
I know, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, yeah, I'd have to start at 6.
Yeah.
I would get no one.
I should try to schedule one just to see what happens. Wonder if anybody would come.
I offered it. Why didn't you attend?
People might. Who knows?
You know,
What?
No, I'm never there that early.
Yeah.
What'd
I
you say,
am not a
Melissa?
morning person, but there are morning people who
Yeah.
would probably be thrilled with the option of being able to come in early to do
Yeah.
training.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be awake when I delivered it, but
I'm not sure how good mine would be if I did it any earlier, but
Yeah.
what more copies for? I know how you work.
yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. Why would you do that?
Do any of you have a story about maybe someone who was pretty reticent, even Luddite, like, who kind of was converted as far as usage of technology goes?
I have a story. Can I go?
Go.
So there's actually a teacher, I think she's a first grade teacher in our district, and she's an older woman, but she started coming to ed camps and the ed tech women meetings, and she has totally, and she's been taking a ton of my classes, like the iOS classes, the iPad classes last year, and so she keeps continuing to try to learn, which I really appreciate. And she admits that she still has far to go, but for her, it seems like what makes her continue to want to learn is the safe learning environment. She says that at Ed Camp and Ed Tech Women, she just feels like she's very supported and she doesn't have that fear around asking the questions and stuff.
Is this Emily?
Yes.
Oh, I know.
Talk to her.
Yeah.
Did you both talk to her?
A couple of my classes, the digital dreaming classes this summer.
She
You
came
got
too.
lots of kudos, Jen, because that's what she
Oh.
said. Thanks. When she talked to me, it was thank you so much for putting those on because they were, she just found them really, really accessible. It was time that she could spend. She was really motivated. There were good choices. And then when she did attend sessions, she was really, really happy with the instruction. So nice work. But yeah, so I'm curious about the, do you think the unconference style was accessible to her? Like the flexibility was good, or what do you think was appealing?
I think so. I think it's the flexibility and the fact that she could ask whatever question she wanted to ask, and they could pretty much, like, she could find anybody to help answer any kind of question, and it wasn't set on, this is a training on Common Core math standards, so you can't be asking questions about anything else, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's not a message in that for ODE.
No,
I have a question for you guys. So I find it very easy to work with people who are actually resistant to technology or feel like they're not very fluent. So like the Luddites and people who are maybe not Luddites but kind of scared of technology or unsure of it. I can very easily connect with those people and help them along and help them to feel more comfortable and confident. The people that I find the most difficult to work with, and not that I don't like working with, but they're just, it takes a lot more thought and a lot more planning, are the people who are a little tech savvy, or even very tech savvy, but of course we all have a lot to learn, and I have a hard time making those solid connections with them. Like I have really solid connections with a lot of people who have come a long way but still have a long way to go, and I have more tentative connections with the people who are further along. And I think they feel rightly so that they don't need as much help. so they're not reaching out as much. And it's also harder for me to find exactly what's going to be like the amazing hook for them.
So I wonder how much of that is related to relationship. That when you have to work with someone closely, you build a relationship of trust with that person, and you have that automatic. So the next time you come to help them, they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And when you're working with someone who has that doesn't need that relationship to keep going, but it's really hard. You don't have an in with that person. If you give them a list of things to do or a list of tasks, think about a Roadrunner style. Here's what I want to have you done. I want you to have done before you leave. Go, fly, be free. But you don't ever build a relationship with them. And if you
that
do,
rapport is harder.
it's the drop by. So, is there any questions you have? Could I be the expert on your side, but not the person who's in with you in the trenches and working to solve a problem?
I think too it's hard. There's a dangerous spot that I think teachers, from what I've seen, it's like an ebb and flow of, I think I know a lot, and then I go to a training and I find I know nothing. Like I have a lot to learn, and then I reach that cusp of like, okay, I've made some growth. I get this from like our iPad teachers one year, when the first year that we rolled out a one-to-one, and they were like the coalition of the willing. They moved these people into this grade level because they were getting iPads. So they were really motivated, and they learned a lot and did a lot of really thorough reflection throughout the year. But they got to the end of the year, and they were all, I would place them in like a young teacher to sort of middle age. They got to the point at the end of the year that they said, oh, we don't need Apple to come out and train us on that second tier. We already know, like, we could do these trainings. And I said, that's a really dangerous spot to be, because the second you think you know everything, you kind of stop learning. Like, you need to continue seeking.
Technology or otherwise.
Yeah, it's an ever-changing field. And as far as instruction goes, like, you might have a lot of tricks in your back pocket, but you're never going to know how to serve, because they're not cookie cutter kids. You're never going to know how to serve every single kid in a certain way or exactly the way they need, so we have to keep learning. So I think some of those tech savvy teachers tend to go, well, I already know all this stuff. I don't need training on this. I hear that a lot here in our department, and I think, oh gosh.
Yeah.
It's like that whole, we tried open source 5 years ago. It didn't work for us. The code changes every day.
It's the same reason why people find one tool that works for them and then commit to it and say everybody should use this, because we figured it out. We've found the solution. We've solved the problem. Now let's now everybody follow along. And it's just not. There's more to it than just the problem isn't as simple as that. Whether it's the training or whether it's the tools, there's always more to it. There's always more to learn, and every situation is different. Just like every student is different, every teacher's different.
Right. I think something we lack in our system with our current generations of teachers is that our K-12 system hasn't been great about the metacognitive part of learning and teaching too. So it's rare that even when I was in the classroom, that I sat my kids down and said, okay, what kind of learner are you really? How do you learn best? What are the, you can ask teachers, oftentimes they'll bring up a simulation that they did, like, what do you remember the most about learning in your K-12 ed? But we're not very good at doing that with kids. What role do you play in a group, and why do you play that role, and how do you understand what other roles group members might play, and then what does that mean for your own learning? Mm-hmm. So I think we've lacked that, and I think we lack it in PD too, and that's where that pattern of, oh, I'm pretty tech savvy, like I don't need as much instruction from Jen, instead of saying, you know what, I really am more of a collaborative learner. So what I need to do is I need to have a small group to kind of collaborate with, to be cohesive with, and then we're going to need some help from Jennifer. But you know what, I mean, it's just versus the person that says, I really need stand and deliver, like, I'm just going to have you tell me to double click on the icon and proceed from there, versus somebody else that's kind of in the middle. So we term it, Melissa used it, we use it in Cadre.
Penguin, Emu, Roadrunner.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily, though, I think speed.
Yeah.
It's more a style question.
It's
than a
more
speed
learning
question.
styles, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I hear what you're saying about struggling with people, because and some of it's rapport, some of it must be rapport and
Yeah.
relationship.
Well, I've got this 5th grade team that I'm working with, and they have one-to-one devices this year. It's the principal cobbled together like a bunch of different carts, and so they all have MacBooks for their students. And in order for them to have that, she wanted them to meet with me regularly. And I have a relationship built with them already over the past couple of years, but not like super intense where they've needed a lot of help, just kind of coming in here and there and helping them plan and things. And I've found that when we meet, they want me to just kind of give them some ideas and then go away. And it's fine. And they're terrific. They're really, it's not like we have a good relationship. It's not like, okay, we're done with you, you need to leave. But it's, it's obviously like, okay, so you suggested Google Classroom, you've given us an overview, and now we need to plan, and you're not part of that planning team. But, in a nice way. And, it's just, there's another team that I work with, and they don't have one-to-one devices, and I'll come and we talk about an idea, and then I sit in on their whole team meeting and we plan together. And I don't know, it's just very different. And the 5th grade team, they're very capable, and they've run into some problems, and then they just figure it out. It takes them a little bit longer than if they had called me to come in to help them, but they stick with it and they figure it out. And I'll plant some seeds of ideas, like at the beginning of the year I said, so in the morning the kids just come and get the laptops out and leave it on their desk, whether they need it or not. So it's just there. And then when they need it, they just open it. There's not that transition time back and forth. And they're like, oh, no. Kids cannot have a device on their desk all day long. We just can't do that. Well, now they're doing it. They have the kids get them out in the morning, and then they put them away in the afternoon. So it's just had to plant that seed, and they had to kind of think about it, ruminate over it, and then come to their own decision. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's more of that relationship stuff. I mean, that's really getting to know, like, okay, I have to plant a seed with this team, and eventually they're going to think it's their idea or something like that. Really good second in command.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everything I say all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about something Melissa Garner said earlier, and what you just said, as far as, now it's slipped my mind. It was about teacher learning style, and then addressing that need, sort of, I don't know how you would put it into trainings. It would take some time to just flesh out that metacognitive piece. I think we do it well in Cadre, but part of it's because people are there and thinking about those kinds of things. And I think Jennifer Arns and the whole team you're really good at setting the stage for that. I don't know how we would do that in our own systems, except to say,
Right.
like, learning is a process. We have to take risks. You need to try some different things out and then reflect on it. We just don't allow that time.
I think it's harder when you're in your own building too.
Yeah.
To think,
to
get above your work and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When we go to Cadre, we're all out of our building.
Right.
And I used to have teachers come to somebody else's school for the training, and find that gets them out of their thinking, lets them be more receptive to new ideas and thinking about their work in a different way. When they're in their building, they're just waiting until the clock hits a certain point and we can go back to their classroom, finish what they need to do so they can go home. And I don't know, I think sometimes it takes a separation from the place where you work to get that kind of thinking really going. For some people, it's just impossible otherwise.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really excited about taking 3 principals to Spark on Friday. So we're riding the train up to Seattle and then attending the event, and then, of course, we ride it home that night. So it's a lot of time all together. But I think we kind of touched on this earlier. When you get them out, so Jeff just said this about physical space, but then kind of allowing that time for really good discussion and the gentle touches, like the small group touches where you have really deep conversation. I think as far as change goes, that seems, at least for me in a big system, it seems like the only way, like I'm not going to convince 90 people in a training to do something a certain way, or that risk-taking is good, or, you know, culture is important. But with 3 principles, I might be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
that is exciting.
That'll be fun.
I know, is anyone else going to Spark? You guys going?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody but me.
Oh, man! Where are you going to be? I'll buy you a train ticket. Just come
Yeah,
on.
that would be awesome. I think Susan's going.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't know if anyone else from my district's going.
Really?
Yeah.
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 Typical.
So, Jeff, I want to capture what you just said. Physical space and getting people out of their own workspaces?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think having a separation from where you work sometimes lets you think differently about how you do that work. That's why we go to conferences.
Right.
I mean, I used to work in outdoor education, and part of the work was just getting people up to the mountains, out in the redwoods, and being in that space allowed them to think differently about life and about who they are. And but you know, when you're around all the things you're normally around and trapped with the expectations and struggles that you have in that space, you don't get a chance to get that meta view of where you are. Time to reflect on actually the spot you're in, because you're in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, I don't know many people who really, there are some, who really and truly enjoy cleaning their own house. But if you go and help a friend clean their house, it's become now a social event, and I'm not worried about my own mess. I'm helping you with yours, and I get to be friendly and helpful, and that was much better than, you know, doing my own laundry.
Yeah.
Way to put it.
See, and that's why those walks you take in other people's classrooms can be so productive, because you're not in your teaching space. You don't have responsibility for these particular kids, and you can see the things that are on the wall, and you're not being critical of it like it's your work. You're looking at it as ideas for your work, ways to inspire your work.
Okay. Is it less threatening, you think?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
To be able to go and see what somebody else is doing, which directly it parallels the work that you're doing, but you don't have any investment in it.
Yeah.
Well, and
It lets you see it in a different way.
There's this thing, too, where when I invite someone into my space, I assume they're judging me. And
Okay.
when I go to someone else's space, I just assume they're trying to be helpful, or that I can find helpful things when I'm there. And so it's a different threat level from that respect. And they don't then transfer if I'm nice when I go to somebody else's classroom, perhaps they would be nice when they came to mine. that jump doesn't happen. But I think it's true that if I'm not focused on me and I'm focused on someone else, I mean, we're all teachers.
Yeah.
We all want to look at other people and see what we can do.
Right. So, Jennifer, you mentioned something earlier that was interesting. You talked about the comfort level of, or no, not the comfort level so much, but your 5th grade teachers, after having you plant that seed, they needed to struggle a little bit, or they had to struggle and then have you produce a solution, or in another case, if they just called you, they would have had an answer versus having to work a little harder to get there.
Mhm.
So I think that's the other thing that I find people don't want to be, and Melissa, earlier you said we're lazy. We're lazy when we do, like the expectation is that someone's just going to give me the information.
Yep.
So I'm curious if because I guess in my classroom I always felt if kids struggled a little bit, they were actually going to retain the information better.
Mhm.
Do you think adults are the same way?
Yeah, I think it depends on style. Again, I mean, some teachers just want you to just come and help me figure this out, and let's make it easier and successful. And others just want to struggle through it themselves, and and be their own solution.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think there's a one size fits all. I mean, I think that it was right for that fifth grade team to struggle, and when they were telling me about how they found the solution, that was terrific, and it took them probably 4 times as long as it would have had they just reached out. But they were really happy with with the outcome, and I wasn't about to say, well, that if you had just
You wasted all that time and it's gone, and they're hours of your life you won't get back.
yeah, but they were, they were happy with it, and it came to the same conclusion, whether they got it earlier or later. It worked out.
I would argue that they didn't waste that time. That for whatever reason, going through the process rather than just dealing with the solution is a much better way to go.
Right.
I know that's true with kids, right? You don't just tell them this is how you should run your life. You allow them to experiment with things and come to their own conclusions, because, back to Corinne's point, they learn better that way.
Well, I think they retain, like, their recall rate's going to be better. Because they had, but the question was, and I struggled with this in the classroom all the time, is how much to support them so that they continue to be motivated about their learning. They don't just give up because they're so frustrated, and then pushing them outside that comfort zone enough. And I try to do it socially a lot and academically a lot too, because you don't always get to pick your working environment. Like, you can code in your basement all day long, but eventually you have to interact with a client. I've had developers tell me I do really friendly interfaces that are super usable because I never ever want to interface with my client. I totally get that, but you have to know what they want in order to actually deliver that. So you have to be able to ask good questions, and like, there are all kinds of things. But unless they get pushed outside of that a little bit. And I think it's the same for teachers. They want to be really comfortable. I started calling the edge of chaos. I just want you on the edge of chaos. I don't want you in chaos.
Right.
And I don't want you really, really comfortable, because you're not learning, you're not changing, you're not growing.
no, it's
Well, and it depends on the type of person, too. It depends on personality and learning style. Like, these 3 teachers happen to be, they're tenacious. And so if things are not going well, they're not going to just throw up their hands and give up. There are other teachers that I work with that won't necessarily reach out for the solution, but they're also just going to give up. And unless I come in and I check in on them and discover through conversation that there was a problem, and then we work on a solution. But the other teachers, this team in particular, they're not going to necessarily give up, whereas other people would.
Yeah.
So it's knowing that as well.
Like how far you can push them.
Mm-hmm. And they push themselves. I mean, this team in particular does.
That's the hope, really, I would think, is that the motivation's high. I think of Jamie Richardson. Do you guys know him out of Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was such a reticent technology user and would say things like, "Oh, I don't do that kind of stuff. Like, it's just not my thing. I'm not comfortable." And I kind of pushed him to attend some leadership conferences with me, and now I just think of him as he's really leading his building to use, and it's all about instruction. It's not really about technology. It's building a professional learning network outside of your building, and how to find good, quality resources online, and then integrating those into your instruction. He's so artful at it. And he was a slow, like, whoa, I don't want to do this. I'm not comfortable. Don't push me. So it's really interesting, but he has a different learning style, I think. I think you're right. It's knowing just how far to push them and in what ways.
Yep.
go ahead, Melissa.
I was just going to say, I mean, it really does depend a lot on the administrator. I mean, for making that kind of, for creating that kind of environment in the school, for being the instructional leader, and there aren't a lot of administrators that are like that, unfortunately.
Really? So if you were to think of examples.
I could think of some, but not very many out of all of our 90 schools.
Really?
Yeah.
So so that's kind of
but that's, I mean, and that's just, there definitely could be administrators that are like that I don't know about.
Sure.
So when you think of the qualities of those particular people who do make educational change in their buildings, what are they?
I'm sorry, is this for everybody
Or what do they
Melissa?
foster? Yeah, no, I think this is for everybody.
Oh, Jeff.
There aren't very many.
Oh, I think that they trust. There's an atmosphere of trust.
Nice.
There's an atmosphere. You know, we talk about letting teachers take their devices home. Where I've had some principals who say, no, you can't. No, that's a school piece of equipment that stays here, and others that say, yeah, go ahead and take them home. And play with them and try things out so that you know how to use the tool when you get here, and that's evidence to me of an atmosphere of trust where we're all working toward the same goal. I know that you have the best interest of your students at heart. I want to learn from you. I want to share what you're doing with other teachers, and then when people are listening, when your leader's listening to you, you're also more receptive to their leadership. So that's just good relationship building.
Good. And I stretch that besides just trust with tools. I think these leaders trust their teachers as professionals. So you know what's best for your kids, and I'm going to trust that you know that, and I'm just going to support that with technology. I'm going to set an example. I'm going to model it for you. What about an expectation of sharing? Do you feel like that's there? I added it to the list, but I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if it's an expectation of sharing. It's so what I heard Jeff say was that it's more about I'm in real relationship with you, and so when you listen or when you talk, I actually listen.
Yeah.
When you are quiet, then I know that you're perhaps learning from me. It's a professional relationship. The expertise does not live in one person at a school.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when that's not present, that's when people get locked up. That's when they're, oh, I got a smartboard now. I have to show everybody I know how to use it. So I don't want to do anything wrong. So can you please show me how to do? Like, how do you learn how to do something you love? If you love knitting, how did you learn how to do that? Did you not touch a needle until until somebody told you how to hold it? I mean, you got to dig in at some point,
Right.
and play. Not be afraid to fail. That's the thing. It's so backwards, and in so much of education, it seems like we've created this atmosphere that's so contrary to any kind of learning that
Right.
we're afraid to fail, and so then our students are afraid to fail, and then nobody's learning because everybody's afraid to do it the wrong way.
Well, and I think modeling all of that, being, not just having those words, talking about vulnerability and talking about relationship building and talking about trust, but actually modeling all of those qualities, and modeling being an instructional leader, like being able to come into the classroom and be a support, not just an evaluator.
Right.
And modeling things, not necessarily just in the classroom, but at staff meetings and just, in day-to-day.
I love that support, not just evaluation. That's huge.
Well, and it goes back to what you said, Melissa, about it's a real relationship, right?
Yeah.
I like you, and I know you believe in me. Then I'm going to do whatever I need to do to foster that relationship and to keep that going.
Well,
funny.
and that. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was going to say it's funny. Some principals walk into a classroom and let me do this. They'll stand like this, with their hands folded, and observe. And the good ones come in like this, right?
Yeah.
They come in and they just sit down and they get in there and mix it up with the kids and enjoy the teacher in front of the kids.
Yeah.
Create a nice atmosphere.
Yeah, and that goes back to that trust. I think, we're all practitioners, even if the practice looks slightly different, and kind of being that support system that allows people, because then when you challenge them to do something new and different, they're going to receive it a lot better than.
And they trust you, so they trust you. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
So even though they're afraid, they've got you. They've got your support.
Yeah, that's good. Sleeves up, not hands folded. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like that. We should make T-shirts.
We should make t-shirts. That is a good. That's actually a good like Ed Camp slogan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Encompasses.
Yeah.
Oh.
Love that.
Well, he's after 10, guys.
What's that?
What's that?
After 10.
Oh.
Is it really?
Oh.
Oh my
Holy
gosh. Wow.
Sorry.
Okay, so that was good. If we can kind of keep developing this list of qualities, because I'm curious. I mean, as we talk about leadership and pushing teachers into those leadership roles and kind of building capacity in the system, it seems like that risk taking, dispelling fear and uncertainty and all of that is huge.
Mhm.
Okay, what's our topic for next time?
Topic for next time.
I don't know where that was.
I know I'm scrolling. Here we
There
go.
it is.
Google Apps soup to nuts. Global learning devices and BYOD.
What about the one after that?
Shift in instruction to deliver content to a variety of platforms.
Sure.
Cool. And so that's going to be on November 25th.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
The week of Thanksgiving.
Week of Thanksgiving?
Holy buckets.
Oh my
Thanksgiving.
gosh.
Our inflatable Halloween decorations have been replaced by inflatable turkeys. I put dog last night and I was like, really?
At Thanksgiving, I'm the only thing inflatable.
I'm glad, because those inflatable turkeys are like the Comic Sans of Thanksgiving. Save me from my neighbors. Okay, cool.
All right.
So, you guys, I am holding this time sacred.
Good.
Nothing is going to get in the way. I need you guys.
Now that's recorded.
I know, it's there for everyone to see.